Well, good night, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Monday Night Live. We're coming to you live from the New Democratic Party's headquarters, and we are here once again with the President and leader of the New Democratic Party, Dr. The Honorable Godwin Friday. He's sitting here with us tonight on the NDP Monday Night Live. As always, I'm your host tonight for tonight's program, Colin Graham, and we welcome you. We encourage you to share this live program tonight, and of course, we encourage you to send your comments, leave your comments, and we will, of course, put those comments to the President and leader of the New Democratic Party.
Do my best to
tonight.
answer them.
Dr. Friday, once again, good night and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you so much. It seems like such a while ago. I was here, but it was only 2 weeks. I thank you and thank the viewers for being here with us. And I trust we'll have a fruitful discussion tonight.
All right.
Something that enlightens, provide information, and make our listeners view.
Weekend, I think you had the opportunity, along with some other members of the New Democratic Party, to attend the funeral of the the persons who, unfortunately, the two young teens, young persons who passed away.
Yesterday you recall last week. Let me say good night to everybody who's viewing because we do this at the radio, but sometimes if you get here. But thank you for being a part of the program tonight. Yes, Terence Olivier and myself. Terence as a member for Southern Grenadines. We went to Southern Grenadines. We went to be in Union Island to be there because they had suffered this tragedy. The fire had destroyed lives, it had destroyed buildings, property, and I wanted to be there to show my support and solidarity and offer whatever comfort my presence would bring, and along with the member for the Southern Grenadines who knew the families well. And so we were there, and this week, the funeral yesterday for Zara Alexander and the Lindani Nevison, the young youngster, and that was held on Wednesday. But the funeral for the two youngsters, Lindani and Zara, was yesterday, and a number of people went down in the ferry. I actually met some family members on the boat coming back up, and had discussions with them, had gave them my sympathy again, and it was a very sad occasion, but it was good to know that so many people, community turned out in large numbers, as you would expect, family members, and gave the two youngsters, tributes about their character, and even though it was a sad occasion, there were moments of laughter, which was, good to see. But it's always painful when you lose young people like that. And I hope that we can learn some lessons from the tragedy as to how we respond to fires, what needs to be done to prevent such explosion and fire in the middle of Clifton, and to It's
Yeah.
one of the things, I was
War for
remarking
jobs and
about it
against
on the
crime.
radio, talking to people, and they were terribly concerned. And the response we were getting from the government is essentially, if you stay on your side of the street, you're safe.
Right.
But the people who were involved in the shootings and the homicides, they were people of a particular type. And you just have to stay away from them and you're safe. But that was the narrative.
Right.
But of course it wasn't so, and people were very worried and concerned. So we took to the airwaves and we raised the issue. But we also had this historic walk that we did from Leeward to town, from Fitzhugh to Kingston, and then the following weekend from Rabacut to Kingston, to dramatize the issue, to say, listen, we can't let it become the norm in St. Vincent that you have every year the number of homicides rising, to 40 per 100,000. That's very high. And so that was one of the reasons why we took this dramatic walk from country to town and from Fitzhugh to town to try and dramatize it, and also to raise the issues about the joblessness in the country, particularly as it was affecting. Because that is what usually gets people's attention. That is not to say it is the only crime that's taking place in the country.
Right.
Because, we have talked about the stuff that most people don't find or don't regard as crimes, but the theft of agricultural produce, for example. That is endemic in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's something that is really crippling the agricultural sector, but those they're thefts, they're criminal offenses. You have, all these property offenses and so on. But the homicides but for myself as a leader of the party, I understood the insecurity it was creating amongst our people. And I sought to reassure them that there are things that we can do to stay safe, but first of all, most of all, I should say, we have to address it at a societal level, and government has to take the lead to say that this is a problem. Don't just think, well, okay, it is episodic. It's something that's happening now, but in the next year or so it will go away. It doesn't go away by itself. These things, once they take root, there was a professor who came here from Jamaica at the invitation of the Christian Council and did a presentation as part of a consultation on crime. And his thing was, be careful. Because if you get to a point where you have essentially you reach a threshold where it plateaus and doesn't go back down, then it means your society is reaching a situation where these serious crimes become a feature rather than something that just happens episodically. And so it was a serious matter for concern. That's why the Christian Council, I think, took the step, of having the consultation after being quiet for quite some time.
It was a good move.
And I was happy to be a part of it.
All right, let me okay, what we'll do at this point in time, we'll take a quick commercial break here, ladies and gentlemen, and when we come back, we will continue the discussion on crime here on Monday Night Live from the New Democratic Party's headquarters. Stay with us. All right, so welcome back to the NDP Monday Night Live. If you're just joining us, we're here with President and Leader of the New Democratic Party, Dr. the Honorable Godwin Friday. We started off the program so far on the discussion of crime here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Doc, let me ask you, what do you think are some of the contributing factors that could possibly lead to a rise in crime in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and what would be the way forward with the NDP in trying to curb that rise in crime?
It's not unique to St. Vincent. You know, the sociologists, people who study crime, criminologists, there's always a relationship between economic conditions and crime. Nobody excuses it. It's not a justification, but there is more than a correlation, causation. There's a connection between difficult economic circumstances and criminality. So one of the safest things that we can do is to make our economy prosperous and get people working and get people to feel that they have a stake in what's happening in the country, and they want to see law and order because it protects them too. It protects their property, it protects their business. You know, and so this is one of the things that we understand from, you know, studying that literature, but also from seeing from experience how a prosperous economy, a thriving economy, people having a job, having a stake, having a future planning, and so on. These are things that keep people engaged in more productive and safer and crime-free activities. So it's an important way to deal with it. But to simply ignore it and to say these are just bad people, all you have to do is, you know, is identify them and keep them in a certain place. You know, that doesn't happen that way because the circumstances create new people who are law-breaking. And of course, if you see that from, you know, people who are in high positions are doing things that are illegal or appear to be and not being punished, then these are things that also get, you know, the whole respect for law and order and you know, proper about this. We have been loud about it, that we can't allow the situation to deteriorate to the point where it becomes chronic in our society, especially the more serious aspects of crime, which is homicides, you know, burglaries, break-ins. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, unfortunately, one of the things that we have very serious problem with the sexual crimes, you know, rape and offenses against minors. And these are things that we have to address at the root cause, and the state has a critical role to play because security, citizens, providing safety for our citizens is the essential role of the state. They have a monopoly on the use of force and power. And these are things that we have to use as a last resort, but create an environment in which those problems would be less likely to happen, to mitigate those problems, and so we don't have to rely on force to the extent that there seems to be happening.
All right. A lot of international agencies say that the number of youth unemployment in this country is a high figure. How important it is to create jobs and opportunities for young people in this country to help get our Vincentians back out working.
Critically important.
Especially facing COVID-19.
Yeah, well, critically important because, you know, the thing is, if you are, I said this today on the radio program, you know, and it's a serious point because one of the things that really makes me sad, I remember as a young person growing up, and as a teenager, in growing up in Beckway and coming to school here at grammar school, you know, debates in the community, you feel like, you know, you're becoming as a little bit of knowledge and so on, and you want to express yourself and do these things, but you felt engaged. I was very much interested in getting involved in you know, the political scene as well. You know, we did things like starting a small monthly magazine and so on that we'd publish in our community. Things that you felt that you were taking a part. You're coming of age and you want to take a part. You want to show that you're making a contribution. One of the things that makes me sad is you hear too many young people are just basically, you know, feeling that they are not given sufficient role in what is happening. They don't have a very sad on the state of affairs in our country, because the future really belongs to them, to the young people. So we have to give them the hope and the confidence to know that their participation matters, and that they can change the circumstances in the country to make it better for them, and so that they can have a brighter future here. So creating employment in the country, creating the prospect for them when they come out of college. They're better educated now than previous generations, and still they're finding it so much more difficult. And that is 3-4 years and they can't find a decent job, I mean a part-time job in this economy. That has to change, and they have to be given hope to say, this is your country, you will be here, your future is here, you are here longer than me to come, and God willing, you will stay here and work and build St. Vincent and the Grenadines because you feel that you have a future here. And that is what we have to instill and to encourage in young people, because by and large I think they want to play a part. They want a chance to make their mark. They want a chance to work and to live and to raise families, and then you could go and travel and like everybody else and come back home and work and so on. And that is what we want to create here, with hope and criminal activities, to put it more bluntly.
All right. Now, schools to some extent have reopened here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines again, but a lot of our young people are out of school without a job. There's a thing, how do we get our country back working again, even though we technically have not really closed as a result of COVID-19?
Well,
how do we get our country working again? Because there are a lot of persons unemployed right now as a result of COVID-19.
Well, there was a lot of people unemployed before COVID,
right?
But it has gotten worse. I acknowledge that the economy has taken a hit, particularly the tourism sector. We have had to. A lot of people, hotels closed. Government didn't tell them they have to close. They closed because there was no business. There were no flights coming in. There were no visitors coming. The restaurants people weren't going to have lunch and dinner and so on. So naturally, as business people, they cut their losses and they close. And but it affects their workers. It affects their suppliers. So there's a trickle-down effect in the entire economy. And so this is why in the Parliament we voted for the COVID relief package, where there was money that was contributed by agencies, international agencies, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the Caribbean Development Bank, money that was allocated to say, this is to help the people of St. Vincent, or the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to help the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So the people's money.
Right.
All right? And so that they now have to find ways to equitably and properly assist the people who have been affected by the fallout. About you mentioned about schools. There is one aspect of it where the government did close the schools. Remember we had called for it, and they didn't close it at the day on the Monday, but they did on the Friday. It had to be different. Right. So the point is that now we have a situation where, of course, the teaching outside of the traditional classroom has been very uneven. Some schools, your daughter's in
grade 5,
and that's one of the classes that has been heavily affected because they're preparing for CPA next year, and then they start in grade 5. And so the teachers want to teach their children, the students, online, no question about it. It can be done, but it's difficult because I think the technology, the means of doing so, it still needs some work to make it more user-friendly and more effective. But some schools are trying, some teachers are trying. In some areas, the kids are just basically not doing anything, and it's been a long time out of school. So naturally, everybody wants to see the children out through the entire school building to allow social distancing. Now the question is, how does grade 5 go back? How do you accommodate them? Some schools have been given exemptions from having grade 5 return. I think your daughter's school being one of them. But it's a challenge. It's a real problem but we need to confront it and figure out ways in which to do it. The government has to have a plan as to saying this is how we are going to, you know, focusing on the business of return to school, you know, but have to return to school and figure out ways in which we can some may be a bit in the school building, but I think for quite some time a lot of it will have to continue to be online and by other means.
You think they have been managing it effectively?
I don't think so, because if that were the case, you know, there will be a common approach in all of the schools. There will be directives from the ministry. This is how things. This is
All right. You mentioned briefly a while ago about the hotel industry and how they have been. I want you to elaborate on that a little bit more in terms of maybe what you would have heard, persons you may have spoken to, as to how the hotel industry, the whole tourism industry, and even the travel industry, as a result of COVID-19.
Yeah. Well, the effect, I mean, it's very straightforward. It's obvious. Everybody can see it. You know, as you go to places in just around here in St. Vincent, but you go Antigua, St. Lucia, other places, hotels, you know, that had 300-400 workers are down to 30 and 40 workers, because they basically only have the essential skeleton staff, because they don't have any guests. And that can't be a healthy situation, of course, for the economy and for all the people who are unemployed, because at some point the assistance, the COVID relief that is provided by various means will dry up. And then what happens to those workers? So the challenge is, we know that in the summer here now, a lot of the hotels will not be able to reopen because there's just simply not enough guests coming in. They have no flights coming in, so people can't travel. And until we can figure out a way to get people here, know that they can interact with the staff, a huge part of the economy. We go through the summer, let's say the summer now, you don't have too many people coming in because the hotels are still closed, the flights are not coming, and so we still have to do quarantine. We're not doing the testing in a way here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that is quick and reliable. So people come in, they still have to be quarantined. And so the hotels find themselves in a real jam, because if you have somebody coming, not as a business, somebody who's coming for the usual relaxation and as a tourist as such, that person doesn't want to spend 5 days or 14 days in their room being quarantined, because that's their entire vacation. So how do you get around that challenge? And we are confronting it in all of the countries in the region. You know, it's a challenge, I know, in Antigua. Have a break and treat themselves, because they have sacrificed so much during that time. So actually a big increase in traveling, but they won't do it until it's safe, that we can have reliable testing, rapid testing, and so that when people come off the plane, let's say in St. Vincent and Antigua or St. Lucia, wherever they go as a tourist, that they don't have to go to their room and stay there until they return to the flight to go back home, because then nobody will come.
All right. Of course, we encourage you to submit your questions for Dr. Friday. Doc, we have from Millie, who asks, would you push tourism to the world and create income through the island's resources?
If I would push tourism?
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the aspects of the economy that has tremendous potential for us. I don't know if you notice it, Colin, but we have one of the most beautiful natural land and seascape anywhere in the Caribbean. I would say anywhere in the world. You fly from, you see it better when you're flying over it.
That's true.
So you fly from Union Island to Kingston, to Argyle, and you see what a beautiful country. Every time I look at it, we're so lucky. Tourism is a St. Vincent, meaning that, you know, the money that we need to send abroad to buy the goods that we use here, US dollars, Canadian dollars, euros, and so on, they come from the tourists primarily. So it's a very, to say it's an important industry for us is an understatement. You know, so of course we would promote tourism, but we have to do it in a sustainable way. And whenever we do tourism as well, we understand that it's part of our development, and development has to be about our people. So it's how does it contribute to the living standards, improving the living standards of our people, providing jobs, providing economic opportunity, but also, you know, not taking away their own freedom, their right But here's the thing, now we have to really take the time to look at how there are certain things that are not COVID related that we need to get right. We have to fix. You know, in St. Vincent here, you know, we have critiqued the Ministry of Tourism over the years because they have allowed our yachting industry, for example, to go down dramatically since the early 90s to now. These are things that we have to get right. COVID didn't cause that. It's made it worse, but it didn't cause it. So we need to put that in place. Even internally, you know, our hotel stock, say on the mainland, is still very small. We don't have enough rooms here to encourage the large carriers or more airlines. So especially the transatlantic carriers. And talking about that, you know, there's some, this is a British Airways or Virgin, and they come across the Atlantic, they land in Barbados, and then they usually catch a small airline to go to their destination because they want to get there in one day. We can't tell them they must spend a day in Barbados in order to get to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You know, they want this is the expectation. You're going to the Caribbean. You don't take.
So we have to face those challenges.
So we have to face it and we have to solve it. And I know it's a particular problem that we have because we have 5 airports in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. People who come through Barbados, for example, they take a small airline and they fly directly to their destination. If the aircraft arrives at a certain time in Barbados, and then it becomes too late for them to fly directly to Quebec or to Union Island because it's dark.
We're looking at those challenges as we speak presently.
We have to. That's the point, is that once we know, I'm told that, take for example this year, that the British Airways and Virgin, you know, the transatlantic carriers, that because of adjustments for their own reasons they've made in their schedule, that the number of flights that you can go directly from the UK to, say, a destination in Beckway, your hotel in Beckway, in one day, the number has gone from this year, from I think about 19 flights per week last year, to something like 3 or 4 that you could actually make a one-day connection. Right. Now you might say that's not a big deal. To you and to me it may not be a big deal, but for the traveler who's coming for a week, that's a big deal to them, you know, because they have unexpected expenses. They have to stay in Barbados overnight,
right,
and it takes away time. And then, when you
and
leave a vacation, you want to go, you want to get to your destination, you have to spend an extra day and so on. It's frustrating.
And then that will impact on our hoteliers.
Yeah, they might decide, listen, well, you know what, I'm going to go to some other destination that I can get there the same day. I have my 5 or 6 days or a week that I have to do, and I return home and done. We don't want that. We want to make it, you have to provide the means for those travelers to get here. And there's also the real impact. If you have COVID, this is just the logistics to our destination. Now, one of the things that we can do in our own instance in Beckway, for example, is to have night landing again for say a period of up until 6 o'clock or after dark, so that the flights that used to land in Barbados, say by 4:30, and then you can still take a flight into St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and to get there to your destination in one day. Then you can do that if you have an extra hour of when the airport is operational, but that requires to have lighting. So these are, I'm just thinking about this in terms is at the specific problems one of, and we are already a beautiful, a wonderful destination, but they want to be able to get here quickly, easily, and know when they get here that it's also competitive in terms of price.
On that note, how important it is for us to preserve our natural beauty, our islands, our coastlines, because there's this issue in Salt Whistle Bay, right, where we see the erosion that is taking place down there, and the livelihoods that can be impacted as a result of the erosion down there. So how important it is, because we heard Patel right here on the same program says there's going to be a new Ministry of Marine Conservation under an NDP administration.
Yes. Well, and the thing is, this is stuff that we teach in schools now too, and we ought to, and we should teach in the homes too. That the sensitivity about abusing the planet, about using the resources of the planet as if everything is disposable and have an infinite capacity, but we know now that's not the case. What we do affects the way in which we as human beings enjoy the planet. If we destroy it, we're not destroying it entirely, we're destroying it for ourselves. Because cockroaches the point of the matter is that we have to make it sustainable for us to be able to make a living, have improved standards of living, and at the same time make it sustainable. And that is why, as Patel mentioned on the previous program, we're talking about a Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Conservation, because the two things have to go together. If you're exploiting the resource, you have to make sure it's there for the next generation. And so that's how the management will come. But in terms of broadly speaking, our preservation of our environment, that comes in so many different aspects to it. And the part of it where the teaching of our young people come in is, protecting our wildlife, protecting our the reef and the coastline, reducing the littering and so on. And I know there are various organizations that have done tremendous work in that. Action Beckway is doing so in their own way. This is an organization it's based in Beckway, but it's doing work to promote environmental consciousness and encouraging people to use to prevent littering. So these are some of the things we can do, but we have to, at the same time, we have to develop all this wonderful gift that we have. We can't just leave it there and say, the old story of the 10 talents and the 1 talent. If you don't
because there's a lot for us to offer.
Yes, and you will lose it, and it simply will not create the kind of economic benefit that we wanted to create for people and the jobs that they must, that will flow from it.
All right, I have another online question here for you. Will the New Democratic Party limit its dependency on tourism and diversify the economy around agriculture?
Yes. Well, it's not a question of limiting, tourism. I understand the question is limiting dependency. Dependency meaning that even if tourism grows, you don't want it to be the sole. It's a very good question, and it is the thrust of it suggests that we must diversify our economy, and that is something of more productive. The use of our marine resources in a way that is sustainable and marketable. And we have to then make sure that we develop other new areas of the economy. And these are things having to do with information technology, new aspects of the economy that we did not think of before, that we didn't use before.
All right. Well, as we wrap up on the program tonight, that you would like to make in terms of the persons who are viewing and following along here with us tonight as we wrap up?
Well, the thing is really is to get our people to think in ways that provide hope, provide a sense that we can do better, and what is preventing us from doing that? It is not us individually, it's the way in which we organize, the way in which we, as a society goes, how we go about producing and marketing the things that we produce, and sharing the wealth that our economy produces. That comes from the way in which we govern ourselves. That's the essence of politics, really. So this is why I say if we change the government, we do it so that we could change the country for the better and make it more productive, make it so that people can find ways to, whoever wants to get a job, to find work in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, have a reasonable prospect of finding work here. To make the economy open, to invite businesses to say St. Vincent and the Grenadines is open for business. When the economy thrives, there's so many more things are possible. All this stuff related to the social problems that we have, the potholes in the road, the lack of bandages in our hospital, the lack of books for a book loan scheme, all those things become more manageable if you have a thriving economy, and that's what we intend to produce.
All right. This is where we come to the end of another edition of the NDP Monday Night. Listen to the radio programs, and tomorrow you can tune in to the NDP New Times. Of course, we'll be coming to you live from the studio of Nice Radio, and then later on that evening, tomorrow night, we encourage you to tune in for the Central Kingston virtual meeting. You can tune in live on Facebook for that too as well, and you can follow along, and of course on Nice Radio. You can also tune in to Extreme. So you can tune into Extreme FM and follow the discussion with Senator Israel Bruce. And of course, we remind you on Thursday night too as well to join the New Democratic Party Facebook page for its another virtual meeting being presented by the New Democratic Party. My guest tonight, the President and Leader of the NDP, Dr. the Honorable Godwin Friday. I was your host, Colin Graham. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for